As bloggers, we're always looking for new ways to increase our page views, especially because diversifying our traffic sources is more important now than ever. While traditional SEO can help us rank higher in organic search results, there is another powerful tool that can help you grow your traffic that is often overlooked. Enter Google Discover, a personalized content feed that shows on mobile devices and shows content, including blog posts, to people based on their interests, browsing history, and search behavior. But how do you get your content seen and clicked on the platform? Well, that is exactly what our guest, Laura Peters Abalos of Mike and Laura Travel, will be breaking down for us in this video episode of the Profitable Travel Blogger podcast. Laura has been able to triple her organic blog readers using Google Discover strategies, and today she'll be sharing her best tips to help you do the same. But first, I'd like to direct your attention to the video description or the QR code on your screen, where I've shared a link to my free travel blogger resource library. Inside, you'll snag access to 55 plus resources, from cheat sheets to workbooks to workshops to video tutorials that can help you truly turn your blog into a profitable business, and that includes a Google Discover cheat sheet based on today's video. I am all about implementation, and I really want to make sure that you don't just watch this video and forget about it, but that you actually use what is shared to make your blogging life easier. Feel free to even pause this video to go grab those resources. You back? Then let's dive in. Well, thank you so much, Laura, for taking the time to share your tips. To start, can you just share more about yourself, your business, and what led you to start exploring Google Discover as a traffic source?
Yeah, thanks for having me, Jesse. I'm really excited to be here and to chat with your audience about Google Discover. I think it's a fantastic tool to help grow your traffic. So my name is Laura Peters Abalos. I am a travel blogger. I have been travel blogging since 2014, although not very successfully until about 2019, when I really learned SEO, I learned affiliate marketing, I learned Pinterest, and most importantly, email marketing. That was kind of the tipping point of becoming a successful blogger. I then created a course. It's called Scale Your Travel Blog, and that's where I also teach other bloggers how to grow their traffic and income. And I also am the host of Travel Blogging Summits, which are events that we usually hold in person. Jesse has actually been one of our speakers several times for Travel Blogging Summits. And basically, it's just a collection of some of the top bloggers and marketing experts in our space. We get us all together, we share our tips and tricks, and we network and collaborate with other people. So that's just a little bit of a background about me, why you can trust me. It is always my goal to find what works and double down on it, prove that it works, and prove it again, and then share that information with other people. So when it comes to Google Discover, I actually started exploring Google Discover as a traffic source when I noticed a huge spike in my traffic. It was really exciting for me. It helped me make a ton of money through ads and affiliate marketing. And I thought, what is happening here? How can I replicate that? I need more of that. And it was traffic that was way beyond what I would just get from Google organic traffic alone. And so I dug into my analytics and I saw that Google Discover was actually driving tens of thousands of clicks to certain posts. And these were especially ones that had a certain flair to them. They were slightly different than the other posts that I was writing, specifically for a Google or a search engine audience. And so I realized that Google search and then Google Discover were two very different traffic sources, and they take very different, tasks, and they take different, I guess, what am I trying to say? You have to kind of create posts in a different way for each traffic source, right? And once I realized how to do that, it was kind of downhill from there, or uphill, I guess, is whatever way you want to say it. I was able to grow my traffic pretty quickly, and even sustain a lot of lost traffic during algorithm updates with Google. So that's how I discovered it. I discovered Discover, and I've been working on it pretty steadily ever since.
So I think this will be pretty new for most people. I'd love to just start with some of the basics. Can you explain a bit more about what Google Discover is, how it works for bloggers, and what types of content tend to perform best compared to maybe regular search engines?
Yeah, that's a really great question. And again, I think it is a pretty confusing concept because Google Discover and Google Search are very different. It is very much like if you go to YouTube and you type something into the search bar to find a YouTube video that fits what you're looking for, that's more along the lines of Google Search, right? We're actually searching for something. But have you ever gone onto YouTube and you look at the videos that are on the homepage and you see that some of the videos, obviously, you didn't search for, but they're really appealing and they're really intriguing. Like, hey, I want to watch that. That is very similar to how Google Discover works. Google Discover is essentially a personalized, curated feed based on what you have shown interest in the past. So instead of typing in a query like you would just going to Google, Google Discover pushes content that they think you'll find interesting. And just to kind of show you, I'm not sure if you'll be able to see, this is obviously for the podcast, but also maybe on YouTube, you could potentially see me do this. But if I'm on my phone, I just swipe and I'm on a Google phone. So, of course, it's going to come up right away. But then there's this feed of all of these articles that potentially are interesting to me. You can also find that by going to maybe your Google app. If you have the Google Chrome app on your phone, just click it. And the first page that should come up, a fresh new page, should be your curated Google Discover feed. And again, it is based on what you find interesting. It is not going to be the same for everybody because it is to try and entice you to read more about from these articles. Now, the nice part about Google Discover is that you aren't going to be competing for keywords the same way you do for Google search for SEO, right? Instead, you're actually going to try and entice people to read what you have to say based on kind of this sensational content. It's not so much informational. It is, but it has to be a little bit more sensational. Okay, now, as far as what does well on Google Discover, as I mentioned, it's more the sensational content, but it is very much important to consider the time that you're posting these pieces of content, these blog posts. So, what is happening in the world around you? What are the current trends happening? And I'm not saying that if you're a travel blogger, you should be writing about Taylor Swift or the Super Bowl, but you could tie it into travel in some way, right? So some of the trends aren't going to relate to you necessarily, but others would. So even in another example would be there was just an election, and it doesn't matter what the election is, whether or not your candidate wins or not, people will always look up how to move abroad after an election. Again, doesn't matter which side wins. Everyone looks that up and it's a huge trending topic. So that could be an example of a post you would write following an election. Okay. Now, it's also important to consider unique angles to these types of posts because if you're pushing out the same kind of trendy topics or trendy blog posts as everyone else, it's hard to stand out. So consider a unique angle to that same trending topic. It's also important to use high quality visuals. So these are high resolution images. We can get more into the details of that in just a moment, but high quality images are going to stand out a lot, especially when people are scrolling. And then finally, consider also some evergreen content that still has kind of a fresh feel to it, right? So you could also do like hidden gems in a certain destination, maybe a destination that is trending right now. So back when the Olympics were happening, maybe hidden gems in Paris, right? Something like that is going to not only satisfy Google search, regular traditional SEO, but it also could hit with Google Discover.
Love that. And you did just go through a lot of really important pieces of the Google Discover content. Are there any other key elements that bloggers should focus on to optimize their content for Google Discover?
Absolutely. Yes, there are several other things that you should consider when you're creating a post that you hope will be picked up by Google Discover. And the first is your headline. Your headline is ultra important. It is kind of like your subject line for an email. And the nice part about headlines is that you actually don't need to come up with them yourself. What I like to do, this is one of my favorite tricks, is I'll go into my Google Discover and I'll start scrolling and I'll pay attention to the titles or the headlines that other articles that are showing up in Google Discover are presenting. Like how are they phrasing their content? Even if it's not directly related to what I would write about, I'm still going to pay attention to how they're describing their content. I can then even take those titles or those headlines, I can go over to ChatGPT or any AI model, and I can list maybe 5, 10 titles that I saw in Google Discover. Again, it doesn't have to be travel related if you're a travel blogger. It doesn't have to be, um, you know, these are any articles you see show up in Google Discover. Just take those, put them into ChatGPT, and say, take note of how these articles are showcasing their content through their headlines. Please follow this style, but do so for this topic, and then give them a topic you're going to write about, right? So, for example, I would take some of these articles like 7 best European countries for solo travel, top destinations for safe and memorable adventures in 2025. And I would list that out on ChatGPT. I would do a couple more, and then I would say, please consider this style, and then create 10 titles for a topic about hidden gems in Paris, but follow that same style. And then it's going to give you some headlines that you can read through, determine which one you would like to test and see what one works best for you. And then you can go from there. But again, it doesn't have to be like hours and hours of brainstorming to figure out the right headline. It's important, but you can speed up the process with an AI model. The next is, again, strong visuals, like I mentioned. So, really enticing and engaging photos. If you don't have these photos, consider a stock image library. The one that I tend to use for Google Discover specifically is Shutterstock, although it's not my favorite. I still use it because they have amazing images. It's not the best it's not the most cost effective. Photo library or stock photo library, but it does the job with beauty. You could also consider Pexels, Pixabay. There's lots of different stock image libraries. And for me, if I really want this Google Discover post to do super well, I will actually full on purchase these photos instead of just finding free stock photos. I will actually purchase some photos. You don't need to do that, but it can help. And then as far as how big these photos should be, I would say 1200 pixels ish. You want it to be a wide image, more of that horizontal. You want to make sure you have that featured image, and it should be a nice featured image. Additionally, mobile friendliness is important. You want your blog post to be accessible through a mobile device. You can check that through Google Search Console, which I'm sure that's a tool Jesse has mentioned over and over. It's a really important tool to determine how your website is running smoothly, and you can check mobile friendliness there. And then the most important part, above all, for Google Discover posts is engagement. So while it can happen where your posts are picked up on Google Discover without any engagement, engagement from other sources helps immensely. Okay, so maybe you send out one of your new posts through email to your email list and you get a sudden burst of traffic there, those signals can actually help Google Discover determine that your post is worthy enough to potentially be shown on Google Discover. You can also share it on social. You can share it on Flipboard is another one. Back when web stories were a big thing, which was like a year and a half ago, that was huge. People would use web stories to really trigger their Google Discover posts. But I also want you to know it doesn't always have to be a trigger. It can go viral on Google Discover without that. It just helps.
I know you touched on this a bit about timeliness and trending topics. How much does that impact a blog post's chances of being featured on Google Discover? And how can bloggers identify trends worth covering?
Yeah, so trends are really important for Google Discover because it's the same as how I mentioned with when you go to YouTube, you can see these videos that are exciting for you, enticing for you. These are usually newer videos, or you'll see a lot of trending topics on the front page of YouTube. Maybe it has to do with politics. Maybe it has to do with a natural disaster that just happened, right? These are all things that that go into whether or not somebody is going to click on your article. And the more that people click on your article through the Google Discover, the more Google Discover will actually show it to additional people. So trends are really important. You want people to be invested in that topic in that moment. In order to find trending topics, of course, the most important thing is to just follow the news. You can follow the news through Yahoo. You can actually have your own curated news source through Flipboard. I always find that that's a really fun one because, again, you can decide what you want to see and what you don't want to see. And then additionally, you can look on YouTube for trending topics as well. So look for news, of course. And then finally, the thing that has worked the best for us is paying attention to articles that do well on Google Discover for you already. So let's say I wrote an article about hidden gems in Paris, and let's say that the Olympics were happening in Paris, and all of a sudden that one spiked. That would give me the idea that that topic did well, so I want to write more about that same topic. So paying attention to your Google Search Console is vital. Go to Google Search Console, find the section where you can see whether or not you've gotten Google Discover traffic, and then go in and see which articles are being featured on Google Discover. And then you can even use ChatGPT and say, ChatGPT, these are the 5 articles that have done the best on Google Discover over the past 3 months. Give me 10 new ideas similar to this that could also do well on Google Discover. And then ChatGPT will give you a list of topics that you might want to target. So that's my recommendation is really just to follow the news and follow what's already working for you and double down on that.
And I'm curious, as you're coming up with these topics, are you creating a separate content plan for Google Discover versus your typical blog post you want to rank on Google? And kind of how are you deciding what you put in both if you do it separately?
I would say yes and no. I don't create content just for Google Discover because ultimately Google Discover is hit or miss. You cannot guarantee that your post will hit on Google Discover the same way that you can guarantee that they might do well on any other platform, right? So with Google Discover, it is definitely a guessing game. And so I don't want to spend all of my time creating content just for Google Discover for nobody to see it, because sometimes that can happen. However, the nice part about Google Discover posts is, like I mentioned, they are a little bit more sensational. You don't have to write nearly as much as, say, like a post that's more SEO oriented. But Google Discover posts actually do really well on Pinterest too. So what I tend to do is actually lump my content plan for Google Discover in with my content plan for Pinterest. So whatever I write for Pinterest, usually those are a little bit more sensational than just your plain information-based post that you would write for Google or Bing or DuckDuckGo. These posts are a little bit more exciting and you're trying to get people to stop in their tracks and click on something that they didn't necessarily search for. And with Pinterest, you can do that too. I've had posts go viral on Pinterest. I've had posts go viral on Google Discover. I haven't had posts go viral on Google Search. It's not how Google Search works. That's not really how it works. So what I tend to do when I'm creating my content plan is I will choose kind of a mix of evergreen and trending topics. And I just make sure that both of them are relevant to the season and specifically relevant to current trends. So if it's not a trending topic, I make sure it's relevant to the season. Valentine's Day, spring break. These are things that are coming up that can do well on Google Search and can do well on Google Discover. And then also that Pinterest component too. I also test everything I do. So what I mean by that is if it worked well for me before on Google Discover, like I said, I'll double down on that. But if I notice that a post does well on like just Google search, not necessarily Google Discover, I try to come up with new ideas where I can then take that Google search post and also turn it into something that could go viral on Google Discover. So it is a lot of trial and error with that. And then most importantly, just optimizing for engagement. I make sure I have great visuals. I have really good storytelling. I use bullet lists to make it easier to read and flow through the article. I try not to have big, bulky text. And all of these are going to be helpful for not only Google Discover, but also Google Search. So there is some overlap, but ultimately, I do try to create slightly separate content plans for both.
Let's say a blogger's listening to this and they're like, okay, yes, I want to do this. What does your process look like for creating a Google Discover post from that first idea to publish?
So I start by going to the news. So Yahoo, maybe Flipboard, maybe YouTube, wherever it is. Even Threads. Threads is a really great place. I know you hang out on Threads. Threads is a really great place to see people talking about the same thing over and over and over. And it's hard to get away from what's trending because it just shows up again and again and again. And so if I see that, I think to myself, okay, how could I potentially tie that trend in with my niche? So travel or any of my other niche sites. And I do that brainstorming. I start with that. And then I put that information into ChatGPT. And I say, here are 10 titles that I found on Google Discover. Just note the style. You don't have to note the topics. You don't have to note the trends and things like that. Just the style. The topic I now want you to create a title for following that style is X. Let's say it's not actually X, but let's say it's, I don't know, Paris Olympics. I've been using that example throughout this whole thing. So Paris Olympics, give me 10 possible topics I could write about that could potentially get a lot of engagement, right? A post that could do well on Google Discover. You can even say that in ChatGPT. ChatGPT knows that. It knows how Google Discover works for the most part. It gives me 10 titles. And then from there, I make sure that the title has that curiosity-driven headline. Now, it's important to note that people will say, oh, make sure it's not clickbait, right? Make sure that the title you choose isn't going to throw someone off if they click on it, they go to your website, and you don't deliver on that information, right? Clickbait only happens when you don't deliver, okay? You can have the most sensational title, but if you don't deliver, then that's clickbait. Now, the opposite is true. If you do deliver, it's no longer clickbait. You're just using a really highly engaged, sensational title. So sometimes I even do use the word clickbait in ChatGPT when I'm creating some titles, because if you actually use that term, ChatGPT gives you titles that, in my opinion, again, if you actually deliver on the information you're giving, it's not clickbait. So it'll give me really helpful, really great titles, and I choose one that I think is best. I then create a short outline. I keep my Google Discover posts, again, pretty short. I would say anywhere from 800 to 1,500 words, which we both know is pretty short for kind of that long form content we've always been used to. I keep it short. Again, some of these articles will go nowhere, and I don't want to spend that much time on them. I create an outline. Again, the outline is just a few headers. I don't need to, full on have 40 different headings that tell you about this topic and then this topic and this topic. I just have a quick outline, and then I start writing the post. And from there, I put in my visually appealing pictures, make sure I have a header image. I have all of these other images that are enticing and beautiful. I then publish it just to really help grow that post and have that post be the most engaging and the most beneficial for you and your business is to also optimize it for email marketing. So put your email opt-ins in there, put some affiliates in there too. That's going to be really important to get the biggest bang for your buck, right? You want the ROI to be worth it. I publish the post and then I index it on Google Search Console. I make sure it's mobile friendly, it loads fast, and then I share it. So I first will share it through my email list. I will share it through social channels. I don't usually use a lot of social channels. So for me, it's my Facebook page. I'll share it there. And then I wait. And sometimes it doesn't hit. Sometimes it hits right away. Sometimes it can take up to a year for it to gain traction and then hit with Google Discover. It's very random. So that's kind of my step by step. That's the process that I take to publish a Google Discover post. It's traditionally just the same every single time.
So it could take a year, because I was wondering, because you said sometimes it takes off, sometimes it doesn't. Do you have a time where you're like, okay, this officially hasn't taken off? And if so, do you do anything with it? Or do you just let it sit and hope that it kind of takes off at some point?
If it doesn't hit, I'm still going to use this article for potentially an email newsletter, right? I can pretty much just repurpose that same content. I can put it into an email and send it out to my email list, make it a little bit more engaging for an email list specifically. I can also use it on Pinterest. So I'll pin pins to it and use it there. And if it still hasn't hit within a year, I just update it. I just change the date. I make sure all the information is accurate, and I just leave it on my site. I usually don't do much to it. Sometimes I'll reshare it on social to see if maybe that will pick it up again. But then if I'm thinking, you know what, this post is pointless. I've never had it take off on Google Discover. It's not really doing well on other platforms. What I might do is just repurpose it into a completely different post, but use a lot of the same content I already wrote.
I have a feeling that a lot of people might be a little bit confused about what the traffic looks like in your analytics tools, like Google Analytics or Google Search Console. Like, is a Google Discover page view the same as a regular page view from, regular Google, or is it in a different place in these analytics platforms?
It's in a completely different place. So first, if you're looking for it in Google Analytics, it's actually really, really hard to spot unless you see a massive spike in traffic, which could be bots. It doesn't necessarily mean that you are going viral on Google Discover. If you are, heck yes, that's so exciting. But it can also be bots. So on Google Analytics, it's actually going to show up as organic search, which is, again, frustrating. It is different than regular Google search, but it does show up as organic search. So you can't really differentiate between Google search and Google Discover on analytics specifically, but you can identify the differences on Google Search Console. So you can do that by going on your Google Search Console dashboard, just go under performance and then it should say discover. If you don't have that button on your Google Search Console, it means that you've never been featured on Google Discover yet. It will show up when you start to appear in Google Discover. But from there, you'll be able to identify how much traffic you're getting from Google Discover. And then you're also going to see a list of the blog posts that are doing well on Google Discover, how many clicks they got, the bounce rate and maybe not the bounce rate, but the keywords and the different topics that you're showing up for. So that's how you would find it, is in within or Google Search Console. There's so many Google things, right? Google Analytics, Google Search Console. It's under Search Console.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong. I believe that Google Discover traffic tends to last much shorter than a typical, a blog post in regular Google, Bing, Yahoo, whatever, can rank for years to come. Once a blogger sees that a blog post is getting Google Discover traffic, what can they do to help it rank longer or at least capitalize more on the traffic they are getting?
Yeah, that's a great question too, because you're right. It does fade pretty quickly. So what will happen is you'll see that spike in traffic. The first day, you'll see a pretty quick spike in traffic. The following day, if all goes well, it should be even higher than that first day. And then the third day, it's usually like coming down a little bit. And then by the fourth day, it's kind of petering out from there. And so sometimes that happens in that same chronological order. However, other times people will see that their post is doing well on Discover for a week or two. It depends. It depends on the topic. It depends on how well your post is doing on Discover. But ultimately, it does fade quickly. And like you said, it's nowhere near the same lifespan as a Google search or Bing or even Pinterest style post where you're getting traffic for years and years. So you do need to capitalize on this. And it's the same as if like maybe one of your reels on Instagram went viral. You'll want to capitalize on it as much as you can. So the first thing I would recommend is to internally link to other blog posts that you have on your site. So go into the post that's doing well and link to other blog posts, specifically blog posts that maybe has a buying intent, right? Maybe it's a post that's related to the post that's doing well, but this other post has more of a buying intent where the person is going to purchase something. Maybe it's like an accommodations style post that you're talking about where to stay in Paris. Or maybe it's like best walking tours in Paris or something like that. And you're linking then from the blog post that's going viral on Discover, and maybe that one's like a hidden gems in Paris post. So first one, internally linked to other related posts, specifically maybe ones that have buying intent. You can also add in those affiliate links to the post that's doing well. Go back in there, and if you're thinking, yeah, but these links, these affiliates don't really tie in or relate to this topic very much. How am I supposed to do a hidden gems in Paris blog post and include affiliates if there's really nothing to recommend? Put a little travel resources box right below your introduction paragraph and just say, here are my top travel resources. List 2 or 3. Don't overwhelm them with 50 different travel resources. Put a couple of travel resources that would make sense. Let's say it's a hidden gems in Paris post. Okay, so then maybe you have that travel resources box and you include your favorite accommodation website or aggregator. You include maybe travel insurance. You include the best site for tours and day trips, right? Maybe that's Viator or Get Your Guide or whatever it is. And just include that in a little box, again, right below the introduction paragraph. Now, to really, really capitalize on this, I highly, highly recommend, and sometimes I want to pull my hair out because this is your biggest opportunity to actually capitalize and create a long, I guess, what's the word? A stable long-term business through your blog is by optimizing it for email marketing, like I had mentioned before. Go in and put a pop-up on that blog post. It's already going viral. Put a pop-up there, meaning if there's exit intent, someone's going to leave that post, then a pop-up comes up and says, hey, download my free guide, or hey, do you want me to plan your itinerary, right? And then it can lead into the sale of maybe your itinerary planning services. You could also, do some type of quiz that pops up. Hey, here's a quiz, take it and see which which neighborhood is best for you to stay in Paris, whatever it is. Try to get their email addresses. These platforms, specifically in this case, Google Discover, is sending you traffic. Capitalize on that. Take those people and secure them on your email list. And that's really important. And then finally, just repurpose that content for Pinterest, Facebook, email, all of that kind of stuff.
I wanted to get your take on some common mistakes. What do you feel are the most common mistakes that bloggers make when they are trying to get their content to show up on Google Discover?
I think sometimes people will just throw spaghetti at the wall, and hopefully this sticks, right? In almost any case, we can look at any platform. I know I harp on social media a lot because it's more difficult to see what works and try to model what works, because it's kind of that guessing game in that area. Search engines are more transparent. They give you the information that they are looking for, and then you can model what you see, maybe on the first page of Bing or Google, or maybe the top pins on Pinterest. Just model what you're seeing. With Google Discover, you can kind of do the same. People will just go out and just try to write these sensational trending topic posts without actually considering what is working on Google Discover. Spend 10, 15 minutes a day, every day, reading through Google Discover, and try to model or replicate in a way where you're not copying, but replicate and model what's already working there. And again, you can use AI to help you understand the strategies they're using for headlines. You can understand the topics they're choosing, and then have AI help you then come up with new ideas that, again, model what other people are doing. So above all, not analyzing what's working for other people, and also not analyzing what's working for themselves. If you do get Google Discover traffic, and let's say one of them works, study what worked. Why did it work? What were the steps you took? Did you happen to share that on Threads, and maybe you never share anything on Threads, but you just happen to do that? Hey, maybe that's a sign that you should do that again and try again. So see what worked, replicate it.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for sharing your tips. Before we sign off, can you just let everyone know where they can find you?
Yeah, absolutely. So you can find me at mikeandlauratravel.com. I have a lot of free resources, blogging resources, things like that there. You can find me on Threads. Threads is one of my favorite platforms these days. It's Mike and Laura Travel Blog, because someone has our name there, and on Instagram. So we're Mike and Laura Travel Blog. Our email newsletter is one of my absolute favorite things for bloggers. I have a couple different newsletters. My email list for bloggers is just my favorite. You can actually also find that on mikeandlauratravel.com. It'll be in the menu option. It'll say free newsletter. And then I also have a free guide that actually will show you how to model Google Discover websites so you can see faster success. And you can get that free guide by going to mikeandlauratravel.com. It's all spelled out. /Google-Discover.
And I will have all of those links in the show notes or the video description, just depending where you are tuning in. All right, now I hope you enjoyed this episode. I hope you feel inspired and empowered to use Google Discover to grow your blog traffic. Don't forget to grab access to the free Travel Blogger resource library linked in the video description or via the QR code on your screen. There are a ton of resources in there on growing your community and increasing your blogging profits, including a Google Discover cheat sheet based on today's interview. And of course, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss future videos sharing these strategies for bloggers who want to turn their blogs into profitable full-time businesses. Happy blogging!